Welcome to another episode of The Necessary Entrepreneur, where we delve into the inspiring journeys and insights of trailblazing entrepreneurs. Today, we have a special guest who has made a significant impact in the real estate investment world. Joining us is Jered Sturm, the co-founder and CEO of SNS Capital Group. Jered's journey is a remarkable story of grit, innovation, and dedication. Starting his career in real estate as a maintenance technician, Jered quickly developed a keen understanding of the industry. Along with his brother, he co-founded SNS Capital Group, a company that specializes in acquiring and managing multifamily apartment communities. With a portfolio valued at roughly $150 million and nearly 1,300 rental units under management, SNS Capital Group has become a prominent player in the Cincinnati real estate market. At SNS Capital Group, Jered focuses on value-add investing, a strategy that involves purchasing underperforming properties and enhancing their value through strategic renovations and improved management. His commitment to operational efficiency and investor satisfaction has been a cornerstone of the company's success. Jered's journey from the ground up in the real estate sector offers invaluable lessons for aspiring entrepreneurs and seasoned professionals alike. In today's episode, we explore Jered's entrepreneurial path, the challenges he's overcome, and his strategies for managing and growing a successful real estate portfolio. We also talk about actions aligning with intentions, making asymmetrical bets, owning versus renting, and focusing on what you can control. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. All right, so hey, Jered Sturm, welcome, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I knew this was going to be a good one today because Dave, when he was walking in, the producer too, I said, oh, some of these spoiled guys from Cincinnati or something, and he walked in and said, this is going to be good. And then you said, I don't want to be high maintenance. When someone says that, it means they're about to be.
Yeah.
So we switched out the chair for you. And then I guess we asked them to bring a gift. They're supposed to bring something to leave behind in studio, Dave. Don't call it a gift. It seems like we're asking something from them.
We asked like one thing.
Okay.
Dave asked me for $100.
Did he?
Yeah.
Can I just get 50 of it? I'm okay with you making some money.
Me and Jack are getting pizza.
All right, I appreciate it. So you brought us this today, and you were getting ready to talk about it, so I said, let's just jump on here.
Yeah.
So first, you're the co-founder of SNS Capital. You guys are a multifamily real estate portfolio company. Manage, acquire, value add, all those things.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll talk a lot about that today.
Great.
And but defined business success. So this is what you brought us.
Yeah.
And you brought one for you too, because we're going to go into it a little bit later too. You're a guy who grew up and you still have dyslexia, right? So I see defined. I don't know what you see, but I see defined on the front of this. So what'd you bring us here?
So being this is an entrepreneurial podcast, I thought, bring a tool that I have found great value in as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this is, have you ever heard of the book Vivid Vision?
I don't think I have. I've heard a lot of books, but no.
Okay. So Vivid Vision is a book that I listened to, and it was impactful because it said, hey, rather than write your mission statement and vision statement in a couple sentences, a paragraph, expand out on it, maybe make 3 to 5 pages of a 3-year vision of what your company will look like, feel like, act like in the future, right? So it's a little more vivid.
Yeah.
And so I read that book and I started to try to produce kind of their guided path. And over months of working on it, it evolved into this. And so this is in magazine format, as if someone came into our company and wrote a business review on who we are, how we act, what it feels like, different roles and the responsibilities in our organization. So I wrote this almost 2.5 years ago, projecting out 3 years into the future. So if you see the date on it, it says January of 2025, right? That was 3 years into the future when I published this.
January 22, it's published.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and I'm actually working now on version 2025 to 2028 because of how impactful this has been. So, this is not real estate specific. This is entrepreneurship or even leadership specific. And so I took a lot of time on just creating clarity for our team of this is where we're going and empowering them to then reverse engineer and say, here's how I can contribute to this. And why this is so impactful and why I brought it in is because it has been more impactful than I realized it would be. And so we have 50 employees now. Having good team members and then encouraging them to work in a unified direction is so much more powerful than having skilled people working in opposite directions, which tears organizations apart. And so my job now at 50 employees feels more about creating clarity, casting that vision, and then empowering people to then reverse engineer the actions needed to get there. And so this has been super useful for that, but then also in recruiting and saying to people who interview at our company, here's where we're going. Are you interested in joining this? Right.
That's
and
awesome.
So it's been really, really powerful. So I thought I'd leave it behind as just a way for others to see how to cast a vision.
Yeah.
Right. It could be done in any way, but this is what worked for me.
Awesome. Are you a scientific method guy?
What do you mean by that?
It's just the approach, how people problem solve and reverse engineer. It's something when we leave here today, we can talk about it. Like it's the hip thing now that people are talking about, like the scientific method to building companies, to growing, to reverse engineering, the way to find truth. Because there's big debate in society now, like what's true around so many things. So maybe it's something that maybe it'll make it in the 2028.
Okay.
That we operate SNS based upon the scientific method. I'll read something here. I haven't read it. So this is when you open this up. This is a quote, I'm assuming, by you, because it has no one else under it, not like Plato or Aristotle or something.
Yeah, it's me.
Maybe that's you. If you know where you're going, you can work to build the right road to take you there. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, but you may end up somewhere you don't want to be. Does that mean a lot to you?
I think it's just a summary of what comes in the next 30 pages, right? Like if we don't define this, and we're all just coming to work hard, but we don't know where we're working towards, it's chaos, right? So,
what was a catalyst for this? Like what was the brain science or the thought behind this? Was it struggles? Was it facing certain business hurdles? Did you read a book that said, is that what it's the vision, right? Was it just reading that book, or was there something that caused you to read the book?
Oh, I'm sure both, right? So I don't have a distinct memory, but I would say our company has grown. The entire 16 years that I've been doing this has just been school of hard knocks, right? Like trial, error, friction, throw a solution at it. Oh, that didn't work. Try something else. So this is probably just one of those solutions that actually came out, effective. But I think if I had to, I don't know for sure, but if I had to look back, it's probably my leadership style was very hands-on. Actually, you mentioned this right before we started recording, is like as the organization grows, that becomes impossible. As much as you would want it to still be the same way of like, I can interact with everyone and I can have my hands on all processes, like that is ineffective and impossible as you scale. And so this was a solution for me to say, how do I continue to lead as the organization grows? And this is part of it, right? How do I create clarity for a person that I haven't met? Right. And it's like, well, here we go.
This is awesome. So why real estate?
Okay. Well, I can go back to the origin stories because it's probably not the most like sophisticated thing. But so we mentioned before recording, like I wasn't a great academic student. My brother, who's my business partner today, not a great academic student. So we were just kind of never really on that corporate path. Right. So we did make it through high school. But it just, call it D student that preferred to be in wood shop rather than anything else, right? And so I was good at wood shop, really good at it, and just had a natural aptitude towards the kind of the trades and working with my hands. And so in high school, I became a maintenance tech working for another local landlord in Cincinnati. Senior year, I signed up for a program where I could work full time and just go to school for 45 minutes just to take my one English credit and then bail out.
To get that D.
Yes. Yeah. I got it. Right. And so I did that and became a maintenance tech, and that evolved into like friends and family asking, can you fix this? Can you fix that? Which then next phase was, can you redo my bathroom? Can you redo my kitchen? And so it's just kind of this organic growth into like, yeah, I know how to do that. Sure. I'll say yes. And because it always just felt natural to me. And if I didn't know how to do it, YouTube was there to teach me. And so me and my brother started fixing up doing like kitchens and bathrooms and additions on homeowners' homes. And then it was, 2008 when we started to look around and say like, hey, look at all these foreclosures right here. Like we didn't have a ton of money, but we were willing to substitute our lack of capital for sweat equity, go in, fix up these single family homes and rent them out. Right. And so we just happened to have a skill set that complemented real estate investment, which was skills in the trades. And we also happened to stumble in at probably the best time anyone will ever see for investing in real estate. And so it wasn't this super like savvy, like, oh, we timed the market right. I was 18. It's just, I aged out right when we went into the depths of the financial crisis. So had a great opportunity, took advantage of it. And then we're really doing pretty much the same exact business model as we were 16 years ago. We buy distressed properties, we fix them up, we strip the equity, and then we redeploy that into the next one.
You've learned some lingo there that the 18-year-old Jered didn't know.
Yeah.
You strip the equity and redeploy it.
Yeah.
So the term value add, for folks that don't know what that means, what does a value add real estate investment look like and mean?
Well, I guess value add can come in many shapes and sizes, right? So it depends on how you're going to execute that. But for us, it usually comes in construction and property management. So our firm today has about $150 million in assets under management. It's about 1,300 units roughly. And so for us, value add comes in construction and property management. So we usually find distressed properties that either are run poorly or need to be renovated, usually a combination of both. But that's the low-hanging fruit that I think everybody's aware of, right? So value add can come in every single line item on the income statement, or even the things that don't exist yet on that income statement. So for us, how we think of value add is just how to make the property more efficient. It could be improvements, or it could be things that don't even exist. And we just, over years of experience, have figured out better and better ways to polish these assets, make them produce more income, which makes them worth more money.
That you can strip more cash out and redeploy it to go do other things.
Yes.
Did you guys have an idea at 16, at 17, and 18 when you're doing that wood shop? Did you have an idea that you were going to be in business, that you were going to be entrepreneurs? Was that on your mind?
I think we knew, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't this, right? It was not well defined. It was more of like, as I said before, we don't fit the defined path of like corporate America. We just never were even close to it. And so it's like, but we are driven. We are smart guys. So like, how are we going to do this? Right. And so, we probably saw some like house flipping shows or something. I don't really remember what it was, but we were like, look, we're great with our hands. We can fix these things up, and we're willing to work hard. So we went that path. But
what was your guys? What was it like to be kids? Was it a traditional household? How were you raised?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I think it has a lot to do with it. So, we did not come from entrepreneurial parents, right? So my dad worked at a corporate job for 30 years doing accounting, bookkeeping. Fantastic parents, both my mom and my dad. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but they were always really supportive of us. And so, even when I wasn't doing good in school, but they saw I enjoyed the trades, they started buying tools, right? And so my garage, where they used to park, got converted into a little wood shop, and just a lot of support there. But our upbringing was mostly in the woods. So we lived near a bunch of undeveloped land. And so me and my brother would go build tree houses and bike jumps. And we weren't in a lot of organized sports. We would do more things like skateboarding or BMX and things like that. So you kind of define your own path and do it your own way. And, but yeah, a lot of just like playing in the woods, a lot of freedom,
A lot of independence
yeah,
at a young age.
A lot of autonomy to make mistakes and do things that maybe cross the line a little bit, but then you figure out where that line is and
or a broken ankle or a broken wrist or getting in trouble or something crazy happening.
Yeah.
Breaking things.
Luckily never too far, right? But I think we still have and had awesome parents to support us. And even when we became businessmen, they were there supporting us through that process, right? Early on, it'd be like, they would show up to these houses and help out and give us bring us lunch or whatever. And so we had really, really, really solid upbringing to allow us to fail and allow us to make leaps of faith. But it wasn't like we started on third base from an entrepreneurial perspective. We had to make a lot of mistakes to figure it out, because simply they didn't know either, but they were there to say, good job, keep trying, all those things.
Was there any tough love at all? Doesn't sound like it.
I wouldn't call it tough love. I would say they're realists, right? So they would give us honest answers. But it wasn't ever tough or mean spirited.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little more even on my parents. So like my mom went to art school, did like kids illustrations for books. So she's very artistic. My dad, more like finance, accounting. And, I feel privileged because I feel like I get the opportunity to merge those skill sets, right? So when I'm building businesses, I truly feel artistic and creative. And it's like I'm, doing things like this magazine here and producing something creative that is tied to finance and money. And so, value add is like an art project to me. And so, I get to merge the support they've given me over the years and the people they are into my craft.
What's the conversation? How old are you and your brother now?
I'm 34. My brother's 36.
What's the conversations with your parents now, with you being 30-something-year-old guys, and you have kids, they have grandkids?
Yeah. What's
the conversations now as adults with these same parents?
So I have a 3-year-old and 6-year-old. My brother has a 3, 4, and 7. So like obviously grandparent mode is in full effect. I actually am in trying to be more intentional about that. So just the other day, me and my wife took my parents out to dinner, just us, because we said like, hey, we don't want to lose sight of, we want to have a relationship with you as mom and dad and not just grandma and grandpa. But still a strong relationship, probably see them on average once every 10 days or so. They live probably 10 minutes, 20 minutes from us. And so still very involved, but now they just kind of ask like, how's the business going? And they've invested with us on several projects. And so it would just be like, hey, how's that project going? When's the distributions coming or whatever? But so they're both retired now. And actually we can dig into this, but they were one of the first investors when first 8 years, we didn't raise money from investors. Then after 8 years, we made the decision to try to scale and raise money from outside investors. They were one of the first, which the results of that allowed them to retire, which was cool. And then was like, man, let's keep doing that, because it feels good to throw what we're good at others and let them experience the benefits as well. So now we have about 190 investors.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's funny with such loving and caring parents and you all just having so much admiration for them, right? It comes through. It's like, when's our money coming, Jered?
Well, it's not like a shakedown, but that's what they're.
When's the distribution? That's what they're counting on. That's their retirement, right?
Yeah. I guess it used to be like, hey, do you need help with anything? Or like, what are you struggling with it? Let's talk. And now they kind of know like that's beyond us. Yeah. And so our contribution is just like, if anything, just a check passively. And so that's what they're curious about.
Do they do they share that they're proud?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they share that they're proud now, but they've been doing that the whole time. Right. So it'd be like, we bought this crummy little foreclosure for $20,000 and they would be so proud of us for having it. Right. But I think what, being a parent now and trying to learn from what I experienced and take the positive things that they did and turn them into my own. Right. I don't want to try to recreate my childhood for my kids, but I do like to learn from the wisdom of great parents who I had. So one thing they were really good about is praising the process and not the result. And so they would praise, you guys worked really hard on this house and that's what I'm proud of. Not like, oh, you made $20,000 and that's what I'm proud of, right? And so now my daughter being 6 and she's in gymnastics, right? How does this convert to me? I think a lot about that. And so, I tell her like, I saw how hard you were practicing today. And she's like, yeah, I got my, whatever skill. And I'm like, yeah, that's really great. But you got that because of how hard you worked, right? And so they were very good about praising actions that produced results and less about results.
How'd they know how to do that?
I don't know.
Because that's a skill in life, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a CEO, as a business owner. And they had never been in. Your dad was an accountant. I don't know if he managed anybody, but they weren't in these big leadership positions. Did it just occur to them?
So no, my dad was, as far as I know, I don't know if he ever had any direct reports, right? So not leadership positions. I would say the same from a business perspective for my mom, what roles she did have. But they were super intentional about creating the space to be good parents. So one of the reasons I think my dad didn't say climb up the corporate ladder is because he said, no, this is more important for leaving the space to be a dad and all that. So I think, probably just a lot of trial and error on their part too. Like they see what works, but if I had to guess, it's probably, how did they know that? I think when you get really good parents, which is what I had and I'm trying to be, is like you have true kind of unconditional love and support. And so they'll figure it out, right? So they look for the best method. And they probably just learned over time, right? Maybe I got some tough love and I don't remember it. I'm sure
you don't remember the tough times.
I'm sure they made a lot of mistakes. Every parent does, right? There's no right book.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure we drove them crazy a lot, right? Not being good in school and pushing back against authority a lot. We liked to do that. I was very good at knowing the line and like getting right up close to it when it came to like questioning authority and things like that.
I'm sure they think that you stepped over a time or two.
Oh, I did.
Okay. There you go. Not just right up to it.
Yeah.
So how do you you said you don't want to just relive your childhood for your kids, but how do you, now you're actually stepping into leadership, leading 50 people in the organization, you and your brother, and doing something that your dad didn't do because he wanted to make space for the family. How do you do that as a CEO of a growing company? And you guys have big goals. So you're supposed to, in about 20 months, you're supposed to be double in size. So how do you manage life on still being a great dad and a husband and all that with the responsibilities of being a CEO of a significant company?
Yeah. So, just like I don't want to try to create my childhood for my kids, I don't think my dad would want me to recreate his fatherhood. We're not doing the same things. I'm trying to take components of his wisdom and apply it to what I'm doing, and we're just different people. And so I am very intentional about balancing what some people might call like the buckets of life or pillars of life and all these things, right? And so being a CEO, being a business owner, there's different responsibilities that I have than my parents ever saw, right? But it doesn't mean I can't be a good parent or I don't really intentionally try. And so there's the cliche of like life is just a balance, right? There's times when I get way out of balance, right? Way too into the weeds with work. And then I'll react, right? And have a great wife who will, she'll support me.
Pick up the slack.
She'll pick up the slack. And then, at some point she'll say like, I'm sensing that the slack doesn't need to be there anymore. Come on back.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and she'll voice that. And, I think I have the ability to hear that and adjust.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not just, you could definitely call me a workaholic, but I'm not one that will do it at the demise of the other really important components of life.
Having this discussion around balance is a hot topic in the past few years. I don't know balance personally. I don't think you can balance things because something's always out of balance when you're leading a bigger company. So you have to find a way to make it all work together. Right. There's a few people who have accomplished a lot in business who talk about this, and there's different ideas. Who knows what the right book is? But I, for me personally, if I'm looking for balance, I'll be very uncomfortable. But the good thing is to have ears open, right? Ears open, eyes wide open, and realizing all the responsibilities around you. Balance is hard.
Yeah, I think
because you're 7 days a week. There's no way you're not.
Yeah. But I'm 7 days a week in all of those things, right? But I think about this stuff a lot, and I think how I define a successful life, not just a successful business, but a successful life, is one where the actions align with your intentions. But I think a lot of people miss the intentions part, right? Like, how clear are you on what you want, right? And so if you say, this is how I want my kids to know me, right? This is how I want to show up as a husband. this is how I want my parents to look at me, or, this is how I want to be involved in my community, whatever. So if you're clear enough on those and you line your actions up to it, that's success. But there's no right or wrong. Like if someone said like, I want to be the best gamer in the world and play Call of Duty all day long, and they do that, it's like, good for you, right? Like as long as that was your intention and you lived that way, great. But I think where you find lack of success, or what I would deem as like a failed life, is if I said, oh, I want to be a great dad, I want to be a great husband, I want to be involved in my family, but I don't do any of that. And so
It sounds like an SNS Capital retreat.
What do you mean?
It just sounds like conversation you'd have around leadership, and you'd talk to employees about not just an intentional life at work, but an intentional life all around life.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
So, yeah, and I even have attempted at trying to create something like this magazine in a personal setting, right? So, like defining my intentions, right? So it wasn't as visual because I didn't intend to publish it, right? So, but just writing out, this is what marriage will look like 10 years from now, as our kids are teens. What does that feel like? Am I doing the actions necessary to get us there? Or will we look up and our kids are leaving the nest and we don't know each other? So in being intentional, doing the actions that create the outcome that you're looking for, that's a successful life.
So since you stumbled into real estate, you saw an opportunity, and I think that's what entrepreneurship really is see an opportunity and taking action and doing some things in a unique, different way that a lot of other folks aren't willing to. But in 2008, when you saw an opportunity, so you kind of stumbled into real estate, even though it aligned with woodshop and being able to fix things and do stuff. I'm sure you can hang a hell of a cabinet.
Yes, I
Put
can
some-
hang.
Yeah, put some good trim up.
Yes.
Can you skim a wall? That's
Yeah.
a tough one.
So yes, I still work on my house. Like I see it as a hobby. I enjoy the trades. So in the business, not so much. It's not the highest use of my time. But at home, yeah, I just about 6 months ago, I just finished up a whole master bathroom remodel. It was a pretty significant one, and I did all of the work, involved my kids.
All the electrical, all the plumbing, every part of it.
Yeah, even the stuff that you would think, oh, you should hire that out, like drywall sanding, painting, all of that, right? It's a hobby for me.
Did you go to work and tell them that you're still working and still know how to do it because you did a bathroom remodel?
No, but even we're 50 employees, right? It's not massive, but working hard and doing what's necessary in the organization is part of the values that I try to ingrain. And so when I'm on site at one of our apartment communities and there's a couch sitting next to the dumpsters, like I'm picking it up and putting it in. Or, I've heard team members joke about like seeing me like inside of a dumpster trying to stomp down, TV box or whatever. It's
to fit a little bit more in there because you don't want to pay $400 for another one.
Well, it's
get it crunched down. It's in the mind, right?
Yeah. It wouldn't even be about the $400. It's just like, this is the right thing to do. And I'm standing here. Right. So, and I hope that shows up in our organization through others. Right.
It does. It's seen. Everyone's watching. Just like when we were kids, we were watching, and your kids are watching. People that work at your company, they're watching. Yeah. You might not hear any. It might just be happening in different conversations. Yeah. So you found yourself in real estate. How'd you go from 2008 in the foreclosure craze of 2008 to 2010 and find yourself into acquiring, managing, operating multifamily, which is apartment buildings? How'd that happen?
I'd say a long, slow process that it was an exponential curve, right? So I think a lot of people hear my story or they look at me now and they're like, oh, 34, $150 million in assets, right?
Who gave it to you overnight success?
Yeah. No, that's the first 5 years, $0, right? Like truly zero. My wife was a teacher. Girlfriend at the time was a teacher, now wife, and basically living off of her, right? And we were making money, but we were just saying like, that's not ours, right? Reinvest it. We got to buy the next one. We need to be able to renovate. And you remember 2008, 9, 10, I was 18 years old with no W-2 job. There was no one lending me money, right? So the first 8 needed to be cash, acquisition, and renovation. And so that took us 2, maybe 2.5 years to get 8. And And so we would go do a high-end kitchen, bathroom in a really nice area and make maybe $20,000-$30,000, and then go buy some really bad house for $20,000-$30,000. Again, this is 15 years ago.
You can still buy them. They're still in really bad. A bad part of town is where there's high crime, where employment is not great, and school districts might not be awesome. There's still some of them. In my mind, I mean, I'm in real estate.
Yeah,
there's still a couple of them.
Yeah.
You want me to tell you where they are? They're still out there.
I don't want them anymore.
Okay, because they're still there, just not as many.
But they were everywhere.
Yeah,
they were everywhere. And so we went down that path, and the first 8 years we didn't raise money from any investors. It was just grind it out, buy the next one, fix it up, and eventually, well, let me take a step back. Around like year 3, we had 8 properties that we own outright, right? No debt on it, anything. Found this little local lender called Valley Central Bank. They agreed to do a blanket cash out
on $1 million worth of property, probably.
I don't think it was anywhere near that, right?
Let's call it $500,000.
$500,000, yeah. Okay. And then they gave us a 60% leverage loan on this. And I'll never forget that day because, I mean, it was 3 years of us like, young guys, didn't have a ton of responsibility. So we were working really hard, long days. And that day when we got that check from that cash out, it was like,
couple $100,000.
This worked, like I cannot believe this worked. And the wise decision we made was to go out and buy 10 more, right? Like we could have easily said like, let's get the really nice car, or like, let's do something stupid with this money. And what we did, despite being, 20 and 22 years old, we said like, there's still a lot of inventory out here. Let's go get some more. And so we bought more, and the snowball started to roll, right? And part of real estate is using leverage. And once that door opened, the compounding impact of doing that really took off. And so, well, I don't want to misframe that. It didn't really take off. It grew at a steady pace. And then it was to about year 10 when it really took off. We started, raising money from investors and focusing on larger apartment communities. And that's when kind of hockey stick happened.
How's that been working with investors? Deep breath. There's a semi-deep breath there.
Well, I was going to introduce the fact that we have 3 partners. So there's myself, my brother, and then Coleman. So Coleman came on in about 2015. Coleman has a little bit different background. He's a CPA, has his master's degree in accounting. He works for a firm here locally in Cincinnati called Phillips Edison. So, multi-billion-dollar firm that owns strip malls. And what he did there was investor reporting. And so, me and my brother are kind of that blue-collar, boots-on-the-ground operational side, and Coleman brings in more of that institutional grade reporting side. And so he has a skill set that's absolutely necessary for us to be able to raise capital the way we are through full-blown syndications and Reg D offerings and being compliant with the SEC. And so Coleman came on around 2015. And so it is a whole nother arm of our business, really. It's a whole nother responsibility, but I've really enjoyed it. Told you the story about having my parents receive great financial results from what we've been able to do. It's really been cool to be able to do that for others as well. Real estate market's been really great. The wind's been at our back. We've been working really hard. And so the results have been phenomenal. So that always makes it a little bit easier, right? Everybody's happy.
You look like a superstar.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to discount us because we have exceeded our projections every time, somewhat due to market conditions, somewhat due to our own effort. But that makes the whole business aspect of raising capital a whole lot easier, a whole lot enjoyable for everyone, right? Myself and the investors. But no, we couldn't have done it without them, right? We wanted economies of scale. We wanted operational efficiencies to get up to, 1,000+ units, to have the organizational chart to support the staff and systems and processes. And it would have taken us 30 years to get there.
A lifetime.
Right? Yeah. And so it was like, well, we don't have stacks of money, so we need to figure out a way to do this. And it was a great way to get us there.
Has there been school of hard knocks dealing with investors' money like it was on the way up? Coleman's he's a value add to your business. Mm-hmm. So having him, you professionalize that part of your business.
Yeah.
Right. But has there been a massive learning curve there?
No. I mean, I would say how I would connect those dots is like the learning curve is we make mistakes all the time through executing the business model that we thought was going to happen when we purchased the property, and then making our adjustments operationally along the way. So we make mistakes all the time in like how we outline the business model or maybe the underwriting or whatever, but we have to make small little adjustments to produce the projected results, financial results that we outline for the investors. And so it's not to say that it's been easy, but as far as like getting them the investor reports and producing the financial returns and like sending K1s and doing all that compliance stuff is, it's just a lot of clerical work that Coleman already had a ton of background in. So he protects us from making those mistakes.
Good.
Yeah.
What about the multifamily environment, man, over the past 3 to 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys know this would show up and come? I mean, there has been massive capital that was redistributed from parts of the economy into multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy the building that has happened on these new developments,
Mm-hmm.
40, 50, 60, 70, $100 million developments.
Mm-hmm.
It was happening around the country, but man, in Cincinnati
Mm-hmm.
over the past 3 to 5 years, did you know that was going to happen? Did you have any idea?
No,
I didn't.
No.
I didn't see it, and I do some office investments on the other values add side, not multifamily, where my business used to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It suffered because of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
but your guys has just been incredible.
Mm-hmm.
The money that's come in, it's crazy what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thought about it? Did they come in and take your space?
No. I mean, I think one thing we're good at when I say we're good at operations, part of another way to say it is like we're good at rolling with the punches, right? And so whatever macroeconomic conditions you want to throw at us, we'll try to figure out the best way to handle them, right? We could sit here and point at rate environment today, and it's like, but we have 2 properties under contract, right? And I don't think they're unwise decisions. Like we're just continuing to figure out how to execute within the conditions that we're in. But yeah, I mean, COVID and the money pumped into the economy had a massive impact on our business model, which is kind of like that middle of the road housing, right? Like our average rent's right over $1,200 a month. So in the Midwest in Cincinnati, that's kind of like middle of the road. And man, did we see a swing, right? And so did values.
Yeah, the value of your property spiked.
Yeah.
So it gave you access to some more cash if you were able to finance them at a lower rate before that happened.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that we did from 2020 to 2022 that in hindsight was a very good move was we used all swap loans. So I don't know if you're familiar with that product, but so we locked all of our swaps for 10 years fixed rate. So at the depths, you know, we were borrowing at like a floating rate of like 3, and then we would swap it for like a
4 to 5,
4.5, right?
Yep.
And so we said, no, we want the consistency and the predictability of the 4.5, but you know, so-and-so can take this 3.5 or 3 floating.
Which is 9 now.
Yeah, which is 9 now, but I don't know if you're familiar with that financial product, but you can break swaps and then they become assets. And so,
tremendous.
You know, we're trading we're still doing refinances and stripping the equity. We're still doing that because we're going from a 4.5 to maybe a 5.5 with agency debt with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And so we're seeing, you know, we're taking 100 basis point pop on the rate, but we're also getting, you know, $1 million plus on the breakage plus the increased value. And so it's making a lot of sense still for us today, but we did exclusively long-term swaps from 2020 to 2022. And you could point at that and be like, man, how did you know that rates are going to go up? We didn't, right? We just wanted the consistency and the predictability of the cash flow. And so we said, we want a fixed rate, right? We don't want this floating rate. Just happened to be that the market conditions were very favorable. And we figured out like, wait a minute, these are assets, right? And Coleman's like, yeah, we can break these, right? And make a lot of money. So it's pretty in the weeds for your listeners, right? They might not be familiar with that product, but we have the opportunity to still execute our model because we took that financial tool and used it.
So what's the moral there? Is there anything about being proactive, being on top of your business? You know, because I look back, so I have a scenario with some properties locked in at 5. Haven't done the swaps, but I'm talking to guys about them. And I didn't know. I didn't know this interest rate environment was going to happen, even though we should have predicted it. We should have. With that much cash coming into the system, now looking back, I think I've elevated my learning curve. We should have known that you increase the money supply by 40 or 50% within a 3-year period. it's going to cause massive inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's going to come with inflation?
Yeah.
We should have known.
Yeah.
I was operating my business.
Mm-hmm.
I should have been more intelligent about it. I got lucky.
Mm. I mean, what was your question? You said what was
so
the
yeah,
learning?
like what's the moral in the story? What's the takeaway? Is it just being on top of your business all the time on every piece,
mm-hmm.
that you're not delaying, you're not waiting on anything? What is it? Like how did you get lucky?
Well, I mean, we also get unlucky on things, but we're trying to make asymmetric bets where we say that the upside is always greater than the downside. And so when we do realize the downside, it's okay because we have enough other bets out there that the upside will offset it and the net will be positive. And so maybe that's a takeaway is like be thinking about asymmetric bets within your business, large or small. Another takeaway I would say is one of our core values is continuously improving. And so continuously improving to us doesn't just mean improve on what's a problem. It means improve on what is working, right?
It's part of the scientific method.
Is
if
it?
you want, yeah, it is.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So maybe I've stumbled into it, but
it's who you are. That's
okay.
when I saw this and I listened to you, I'm like, oh, this guy's operating based on the scientific method, whether he knows that or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we learned that through trial and error, but not the formal education of whoever is, preaching that. But yeah, I mean, so for me, continuous improvement and like figuring out how to take what you have and be better with it is like, we didn't intend for those swaps to be assets. We didn't intend for breakage to make us money. But
you didn't even know about it beforehand.
We were aware of the term like in the money, but we weren't thinking like we're going to get that.
This is an asset.
Yeah. We were just like, great, we're locked in. Now we can focus on operations.
Yeah.
But paid off. And so, it's just rolling with those punches, trying to flip the rocks to find the opportunities given the conditions that you're in. Right. And so that's what we're good at. Maybe that's the moral of the story is like, there is opportunity in all market conditions, whether that's interest rates or recessionary, whatever we're in.
Yeah. I mean, cause the offset to higher interest rates are higher cap rates. And that's how these properties are evaluated. A lot of people how do you guys value it? In the commercial trading of office space, it was always the value it's not a reproduction price. The building we're sitting in now would cost $36 million to reproduce. Mm-hmm. It's not worth anywhere near that.
Yeah.
It's worth based upon the return of capital.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same way that apartment deals and multifamily are evaluated at cap rate?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So right now, are things trading at a cap rate of, there were some of these huge projects. We were involved in one being a brokerage, traded for $73 million. It was a cap rate of 4. Mm-hmm. Just a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming those are trading at 6 and 7 now. I could be wrong, but I'm assuming.
Well, let's talk about that. I would say like there's stabilized, right? And so if you're going to say what is C to B class multifamily in Cincinnati, Ohio trading at stabilized, I would say 6 to 7.
There you go.
Right. But, I talk about this with our investors a lot because they'll ask me the question like, what cap rate are you buying this at? And we buy heavily distressed property.
That's the value add piece.
So let me go to a specific example. We bought a property and there's no other way to spin it than we bought it at a negative cap rate, right? Because it was losing money. So anything losing money is going to produce a negative on the cap rate, because we're paying something to buy it. So unless they were paying us, it's going to be a negative cap rate. So even the properties we have under contract right now on trailing 12 actual financials, it's probably a 2, maybe a 3 cap. But they're running it terribly, right? So I look at their expense ratio and I say, okay, they're running at 60% expense ratio. We own very, very similar assets across our portfolio that we know we can run it at a 42% expense ratio. And so, once we take over,
you're making 18% margin instantly.
Yeah, like we can take it from a 2 to 3 cap, and by the end of the first year, we're at a 10 cap, right? But the market's a 7. There's your value add, right? It's how confident are you in the ability to execute that movement of value? And so, when in our business model, cap rate is only important
stabilized
at the refi or the sale.
Yeah.
Right?
So a stabilized property.
Yeah.
When you hear the term passive income, what do you think?
I think of our lucky investors. No, yeah. So, our investors are truly limited partners, meaning they have no operational control of the entity that we purchased the property under, and they delegate that responsibility to our team, SNS. And so do I think they are passive investors? They're about as close as you can get, but I don't think anything's passive, right? Because they got to hold me accountable. They got to log into their portal. They got to monitor the quarterly reports. They got to make sure their bank is set up, whatever. These small things that passive investors need to do to ensure that their investment is still a wise investment. Me personally, this is not a passive business, right?
Isn't that the idea that's sold so often to people?
I think so.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah, just mailbox money, right?
Yeah.
Be a landlord, mailbox money.
On the way up,
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
No, it's been anything but for me, right? And maybe one day.
Well, yeah, I think once you're working with large amounts of capital, but the passive part is you're not physically doing the work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But those investors are still mentally involved in the investment. They're not day to day,
Mm-hmm.
but they're watching their money.
Yeah.
Right? They're doing some things.
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, on the way up, I've never seen anyone be able to build anything, the business, and to be passive.
Yeah, I think if there's a future tipping point for me, it might be. So we have SNS Management, which is like the company that oversees the operations. It's our property management company that we hire to oversee, right? We don't do any third-party management, anything like that. We just hire for our own assets. Then we have SNS Capital Group, which raises money from investors and is the general partner. So if we were to grow to a size where SNS Management had the org chart in place where I was hiring a president or CEO or something like that, it would take a lot off my plate, but we're not ready. So I'm not going to do it. Right.
When will you be there? Is it units or is it revenue?
I don't know. I think, I don't know what I don't know. I haven't been there before. I have always said to our team, my objective is to replace myself. So that's about building those systems and processes to be able to do so. And I said, it's just going to take someone who can do it equally or better than me. And I have my senses out to monitor when that will be. I can tell you from today, we're still quite a bit away. Right. So, maybe it's 5,000 units. I'm not really sure, but it just takes a lot of revenue to support that type of org chart and staff and corporate office and all of those things. And so we're not there.
But you're working towards it.
Yeah, we're working towards it.
That's good. Yeah. What does legacy matter to you?
In what way?
Like what people leave behind. They think about legacy, I think, when they're coming with the pine box that we made, and they're reflecting on the life that we lived, the legacy that we left behind, whether it's after retirement, whether it's after we're gone physically. Does that matter?
Probably for me, a lot less than the average person, but I don't know. So I guess let me dig into different components. So financially, no, not at all. Like I have some friends I was talking to the other day, and the complexity they have gotten themselves into from an estate planning standpoint and like avoiding estate taxes and all these things. I'm like, is it really worth it? Right? Like that's like you're putting so much thought, so much effort into this. And it's like, at 100, what's the difference between 100 million and 200 million, right? Just
no different life.
Yeah. None. So legacy from a financial perspective, no, I don't care at all. Legacy from, say, like the people that I interact with, I would say I only care about it one generation, right? So like I do care the impact that I have on my kids. I care, the impact that I have on my parents, but I don't want to etch my name into history. I have no desire to do that. My name doesn't need to be on the side of buildings, nothing like that. It's like, am I doing the job that I set out to as a father to turn these people into good people so then they can do their own job to create more good people? But that's about as far as I want my legacy to go, is one generation removed and then forget about me.
But I'm assuming you named the name after you and your brother, Sturm and Sturm.
Yes. So
you named it after you.
Yes. So I actually was just on a recent podcast and they were talking about the name of the company. And I said, there's been multiple times where we considered changing the name because I don't know if you've ever named companies, but it's sometimes you're just like, I don't know. But so sometimes you don't have a lot of money. You just say, what domain is open? What web domain is open or whatever. And so there wasn't a ton of thought to it. it is Sturm, Nelson Sturm. That's what it is. And in hindsight, I wouldn't have named it that.
Why not?
Because it's hard to understand over a phone call. So when we have all of our leasing agents say, oh, you just go to snsmanagement.com. People write S and S, right? And so I would have just said, here's a word like pivot that everyone knows how to spell.
And the domain's available.
Yeah, things like Google, Tesla, like, a couple 5-letter word, great. But I don't know. We did follow trend also. There's in Cincinnati, there's like all of these real estate organizations for some reason that are 3 letters. There's BRG, PLK, CMC, SNS, SPS. I don't know why we do that.
But you guys are unique and different. You don't want to be like them.
Well, if you would have asked me that 10 years ago, I'm just like, sure, I want to be like them, right? I don't know.
Do you care about being different?
I'm competitive, so I care about being better. And if that, well, yeah, I do. I think the when I think of SNS management, I think the property management industry is one that I'm not, as a whole, very proud of. And so I would like to be different from the industry, and for me, different being better.
Why aren't you proud of it?
I don't think so. If you look at businesses, I think we're about 30 years behind, right, in this specific niche. Like, there's half of our industry is still doing like paper leases, paper work orders. It's like, well, how are we so inefficient? They don't look at data. They don't look at analytics. They don't collect it. It's like, why? Every business is using this stuff. And some reason we're so far behind the curve because it's not a very complex business. Being a landlord is quite simple, right? And because it's simple, you can become complacent. And I think that's why we're not very good as an industry. We can and do become complacent. And then there's probably the answer maybe you expected is like, there's that complacency then also shows up in like how you step up to the responsibility of being a landlord, right? So for us, our when I think SNS management, our mission is to deliver the feeling of home. So not necessarily a home, but the feeling of home. So things like stability, belonging, respect. And if, this all could just be like fluff words on our website, but I really do believe this, that if we do that right, and we have now thousands of people that live in our apartment, if we step up to that plate and do that right, deliver the feeling of home, what impact does that make on them, right? We talked about my upbringing, how solid it was, like home life. And then the encouragement it gave me as like what could have been a very troubled kid, to do something good. If we can step up to the plate, deliver the feeling of home to the thousands of people that live in our communities, then what impact does that make on our communities and then ripple out ultimately the world, right? I'm getting a little like woo woo, but it's as simple as, and if you look at this magazine, you'll see it as like, I shared an example. It's a hypothetical example, but it's like, to illustrate what I'm trying to say here is, I share a story of like a single mom comes home from work, steps into her apartment. She sees that her refrigerator, is still broken despite submitting the work order. So the food in the refrigerator is ruined because it wasn't cooling it. At that exact moment, I think I put like 4-year-old son runs out of the back bedroom, says, "Oh, mom's home. And in that moment, she like drops her work stuff and is frustrated and like ignores the kid, right? If we step up to the plate as an organization and fix that fridge, as simple as this example is, it allows that mom the opportunity, that moment to say, I'm going to pick up my kid, say I missed you, say I love you, whatever. And what impact does that have? The trickle down effect, the ripple effect. And so there is so many opportunities as landlords to have a positive impact. I would say to allow the conditions to let people produce home life that will make our communities better. And I don't think as an industry, we step up to that responsibility as well as we could.
Gives you guys an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we do step up to that as SNS, but not so much as an industry.
Where did this do the right thing principle come from that you just spoke about?
So like moral compass. Probably a lot from my parents, and then a lot of other people that I've just come across, right? Probably started with my parents, and then it's kind of like, what are the type of people you want to associate yourself with as you grow up and become your own person? And so I gravitated towards people who had high character and high integrity and wanted meaning in life. And so, I'm not a religious person, but there's a lot of like religious teachings that would probably land into these things, but that's not
Some moral foundations about how to treat others and mutual respect.
Which I agree with all of them, but that's not where it comes from for me. And so I would say just the people that I've had the privilege to surround myself with over the years.
How does a dyslexic kid write this?
Yeah. So I think I don't know this. I haven't done a ton of research, but there's probably some kind of like spectrum of dyslexia, right? And so it was rough about middle school age, right? And then I would say junior year of high school, I started to figure out like, wait a minute, I learned differently. So I have my audio comprehension is very good, right? If I listen to podcasts, if I listen to books, like I'm absorbing it all. If I take notes while someone is talking, worthless. Right? I can write it, but I just don't really comprehend what I'm writing. I can read you everything in this book, but I'll get like maybe a quarter of it. Right? So how do I write this? A lot of it is where I will type it out, highlight it, have the computer read it back to me. I'm listening to it. I'll hear all the mistakes, make the changes. And so it just takes a little bit longer. And then I do consider myself someone who's pretty well spoken. So there's been a lot of times, a lot of these paragraphs in here is just me hitting record and doing voice to text. So we talked about rolling with the punches, the conditions that you're in. There's been a lot of technology to be able to help me out, right? But if we didn't have spell check, it would be a disaster for me.
Richard Branson figured it out somehow.
Is he dyslexic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, and so coming through school, one thing that it taught me is, okay, this system doesn't work for me. I'm going to have to figure out a way to convince or coerce, I don't know, get people on board.
You're going to trick some folks is what we're going to do. I'm messing with you.
I'm getting people to collaborate towards something that I need, right?
You're going to find a cohort around the idea.
Yeah. And like whether that was teachers or
principals
or student. Yeah, I'll give you an example. In college, I didn't get many textbooks because they weren't useful to me, but I would go to all the lectures, just listen, and I would do a good job. But anyway, this is a specific example of how maybe it translated to me being dyslexic. So we had some class, I don't even remember what it was. End of the semester, it was take home exam, open book, everything. I'm like, well, I didn't even buy the book. And it's probably 200 questions. So it's just more of like, are you going to do it? So what I did was I was looking at this like, man, I don't have the book. This is going to take me forever. I emailed half of the class. Hey, if you do questions 100 through 100, I'll do questions, 101 through 200. And then I emailed the other half of the class.
No, you didn't, Jered.
And so it's like, that's an example of like being dyslexic. You have to solve the problem, right? I had a problem at hand. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this, but who can help me solve this?
CEO of the class.
Right. And so all I did was I lived up to my word. I just exchanged everybody's and everybody had half of the exam, but I had none.
The same gray area that your parents experienced when you were an adolescent.
Yeah.
Working the system. But maybe that's what you wanted to do, right? That's what resiliency and persistence looks like. You figure out a way.
Yeah. And you do start to question things too, more of like, why are we doing it this way? And
difficult students.
Oh, I was an extremely difficult student because I was smart, but I didn't care that much about the outcome they cared about.
So how do you, as a CEO, how do you handle an employee that maybe takes that position?
Well, I would say that's not the natural tendency of most people who prefer to be an employee. What you mean, like combative or like anti-authority?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we try to encourage autonomy and decision making. And so I mean, if I had an employee who was like me as a student in high school, they wouldn't be my employee. That's the honest answer. Because I was combative for the sake of being combative. But if you're combative for the sake of finding a better way, that's great.
How do you tell the difference? How do you make a distinction? You think you know it? You think you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think anyone could, right? It's a gut feel, but as a leader over the years, you can learn from your experiences of interacting with others. And yeah, I think you see that.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like these conversations, be sure to subscribe to The Necessary Entrepreneur on your favorite platform so you never miss out on future content and fascinating guests. You're reflecting on some experiences.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm withholding all the names. Yeah.
What's it like to be an investor with SNS? What's that experience like?
You mean like a passive investor in
Yeah.
our deals?
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we go out, we source deals. We're looking for the best opportunities. We underwrite, we make offers. We don't get most of them, but occasionally we line one up and we put that deal under contract. We do start our due diligence process by, checking surveys, checking environmental reports, walking every single unit. And through that due diligence process, we draft an offering memorandum, which is basically a book telling investors all the reasons why we like the project and what we intend to do with it. So it outlines all of that. Then we send that out to our investors. They make a decision. I would like to contribute, or I would like to participate, or I would not. And so it's a deal by deal basis. We don't raise a fund and then just say we're taking your money and do whatever we want with it. And so our minimum investment is $50,000. Our average investment, I think, is 170. So we have we have usually first time investors come in, dip their toe, experience how we perform, and then up it. So then they make that commitment, and then they own a portion of the LLC that owns the asset. So they receive all of the benefits of ownership that they would as if they went out and bought a single family rental. So all the depreciation, all the cash flow, and all the benefits that you receive through owning real estate.
Increased equity, all that stuff.
Yep. So all that forced depreciation that SNS works hard to produce, they benefit from. And then we report to them on a quarterly basis. So submit a narrative of all the things that went right, all the things that went wrong, how we're reacting to it, how our business plan has adjusted, and then all the financial reports. And then we, do automatic ACH transactions to all of our investors per the distributable cash flow remaining at the end of the quarter.
What, because you can't guarantee returns.
Mm-hmm.
That's a no-no
Yes.
in the world.
Yeah. That's called debt.
Yeah, that's not good, right? Yeah. So how do you explain that to potential investors?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a target, like based upon the pro forma? Like, what's a target without being able to guarantee returns?
Yeah, I mean, you can say, here's our projections. Yeah. And so, we now have 17 communities, and we've put 16 years under our belt of learning how to make those guesses. That's called, underwriting, is like us guessing on, we think we can operate this property and this expense line item at this. We think we can get this in rents. And so you take that income statement, plug in all your projections, your pro forma to say, this is how we think we can do it. If we buy it at X and we have this, left over in year one, here's your return in year one, here's your return in year two. And then we would average that and present it and say, we're, the one we're underwriting right now, it's like cash on cash return, excluding the sale, 11%. Some people prefer IRR. For this one is projected at 14%, right? And it's a 10-year hold period. So we would outline all of that, but it doesn't always go to plan, right? So we've been fortunate, again, to have the wind at our back to be able to exceed our projections. But there's also been times where we say, we originally thought we were going to refinance in year 3, but conditions are good. Let's do it in year 2. Or we say, hey, year 3 rates are up. Let's pause and go to year 5, right? And so I think as an equity investor, you have to know that you're assuming the risks of rolling with those punches and, ebbs and flows with the market. And if you want 5% every single month, put your money into a money market account or go buy some bonds, but you're not going to receive the upside potential, right, that we chase and that we work hard to capture.
Without naming any names on the internet, there's some big brands of individuals that hold themselves out as the gurus in this space nationally. What's your thoughts about some of those people? Are they doing it in an honest way? Are they just doing what you guys do, just in a bigger spectrum? Because you probably hear a lot of it. Off mic, we could talk and we could say a name or two. There's a big one. Are they doing it the right way? Do you all have inter-office conversations like they're a joke, they're not doing it the right way? What's your thoughts about the industry as a whole?
So, I mean, my nose is pretty hard against the grindstone, meaning like I'm focused on our business.
Because you could invest with those folks too.
I could, but
they're
I
out
don't.
there, right? They're out there saying, spitting the stuff. So
I think the way I'll answer this is like if you're a limited partner considering investing in a multifamily real estate syndication, you have to ask yourself, what is the core competency of the person that I'm about to hand this money to? And so I would say for SNS, we are first and foremost owner-operators of multifamily assets. We just happen to use syndication or raising money to further that core competency. On the other hand, you might have groups that their core competency, and this is in my opinion not a matter of right or wrong, but their core competency is raising money, right? Marketing, raising money. They just happen to choose multifamily as the venture to further that core competency. And so you have to ask yourself that. And so I don't think it's for me to say they're doing it wrong. They're doing what they're good at. But they could have raised money for tech. They could have raised money for whatever venture. They're just great at raising money. And as a limited partner, you have to ask yourself the question is like, is that the partner that I'm wanting in the relationship? Are they contributing value to this partnership in the way that I want them to? If the answer is yes, go ahead.
More power to them, right?
Yeah, it's not up to me.
Yeah. Where do you go? So you read the book, which led you to build a 3-year plan.
Yeah.
That causes you to write things like this. What does you're working on another one, 2028.
Mm-hmm.
Is that as far out as you go? 3 years?
Yeah, it's hard to think past that. Yeah. Because, I mean, I sit here and say, like, we're great at rolling with the punches. We make adjustments, all this stuff. It's like, if you go out 10, I mean, I'm certainly thinking about that stuff when I'm building the 3. But as detailed as this is, I mean, it's really detailed. If I did this 10 years out and got as detailed as I am, most of it wouldn't happen. And so 3 is about as far as I feel like I can go and actually be effective. And let me build on that and say, we're a little over 2 years into this one. And what I did at the holiday party, so end of year, kind of change of the calendar year, I went through and we highlighted, our company color is blue. We highlighted everything in blue that I felt we had achieved and left everything in either gray or black and white that we hadn't. And it was about 60% of the word count was blue. And for me, that's a huge win. And so when I wrote this, it was more about who we become along the way of trying to get to this than actually getting to all of it. And so you mentioned, 2,500 units, we're about half of that. We won't get there, right? You said 20 months. I think it's less than that. And so, but that's okay, because like it's about who we became as an organization in pursuit of that. And eventually we'll get there, or maybe we won't. I don't know. But I'm super happy with the things that we turned blue in this magazine, because I think we're better because of it. And then there's things in this that were not in this magazine that we did along the way that I'm also really proud of. So you got to write it with some flexibility.
So it's okay to be like Elon Musk.
What's he do?
Well, he kind of he inaccurately, which is, I think this is it's led to his success. He inaccurately targets and puts targets in place. They never achieve them. He's always talking about what they're going to do next year and 2 years and 3 years. And if you look back over history, he's never achieved them in that time frame. Mm-hmm. But the possibility of trying to hit that target probably enabled them to hit it in 5 years, mm-hmm. in 7 years. That's what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I think you go back to some of the thought leaders of Jim Rohn. It's not about how much money that you make or any position that you acquire. It's the person that you become. Mm-hmm. And I think if that's what you're striving to be, it's because once you become the person that's capable of this, you're going to continue to accomplish it, achieve it, and set you up for the next one.
Yeah, I'll flip to a page that everyone seems to understand what I mean by this.
What page are we at here? Okay. Yep, the Chick-fil-A of apartments.
The Chick-fil-A of apartments,
there you
right?
go, man.
And so it's like when you walk into a Chick-fil-A, they
just
don't do anything different
They
than
do it.
Burger King and McDonald's, and so
They do it right, man.
but they do it really well, and it reflects in their profitability. And so,
have you been down there to their corporate office?
No.
If you buy enough Chick-fil-A on your app, you have the right to do so.
Okay.
And I have it on my app.
Okay.
So
You have the red carpet rolled out for you.
Well, I actually have the red signature account. Yes.
Okay.
So I think so. Go spend a lot of money at Chick-fil-A,
Okay.
and
We just had them cater our company picnic, so
see,
but I let our intern get the points.
that's a mistake because he or she may be able to do it. So let's pull it up here. I think I get a tour of their back office. You can go online and register for it anyway. But to your point, I have the same feeling about them that every time, and if not every time, almost every time, it's my pleasure.
Mhm.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
The process, it's one of the fastest drive-through lines in efficiency I've ever seen.
Mhm.
And it seems like it is their goal, no matter if it's their first day, how much they're making, it is their goal to provide that level of service. They're not focusing on chicken sandwiches.
Mhm.
There has to be a bigger idea behind it than we're just serving chicken sandwiches.
Yeah.
There has to be. Have you done a deep dive into it?
Into their
them?
organization?
Mhm.
No, but I think anyone who is a leader, especially a business owner, to get, I don't know how many employees they have, but like to get 10,000 people to say my pleasure rather than thank you is a feat in itself that is so impressive. Like, and so I mentioned like who we become along the way, right? So if we're trying to be, the Chick-fil-A of apartments,
Yep.
that means that if the right environment comes along where 1,000 units present itself to us, I do feel that operationally we're prepared to take that on.
That's big.
But like if the market conditions and our efforts to find those 1,000 units don't line up, that's okay too. So that's kind of where we're at.
So there you go. So you can see I wasn't just telling a story there on the benefits of the signature status.
Yeah. So for everybody who says or can't see this, it says he spent $1.4 million at Chick-fil-A. That's crazy.
No, what it does actually say is access backstage tours at the Chick-fil-A support center, whatever that means. But here's what I do have if we want to talk points. I think I can buy like 1,000 chicken sandwiches with my points. I'm pretty sure.
Now you're just bragging.
No, you know what I am? Because it's not something that you have to be careful these days, which is weird. I think that's a lot of points. You can get a chicken sandwich for 400 points. So
Okay.
yeah, but you have to be careful because everything these days I won't draw you into this, but there's times when I buy Chick-fil-A and people judge me for supporting what they believe in, and I'm like, no, it's a good chicken sandwich, and they treat me really well when I go there, and I respect the business. What they do with my profits is up to them. I just think it's a good business. So I hear that.
Well, we can go down that rabbit hole. I'd say I'm very good at paying attention to what matters and ignoring what doesn't.
What matters?
Not what someone's opinion at Chick-fil-A is. It doesn't matter to me. So like maybe that's a part of that whole legacy thing. Like I'm focused on maybe the impact I have on the people that I'm closest with, and it's kind of like if someone feels strongly one way or the other, it's like fine, both of you can feel that way, right? Like it's not, it doesn't have my attention, right? I forget, it was like not that long ago, maybe 2 months ago, someone said to me like something about Donald Trump and Biden running for president, and I was completely unaware that those were going to be our options. And I was like, oh really? And how do you not know that? It's because I just do not pay attention until it's like my time to pay attention to that. But I'm not immersed in whatever platform or news or whatever. I just it doesn't attract me. So I would rather spend hours trying to think about and write out the intentions of my life than to watch some news thing about something that doesn't impact me.
What would you say to the folks that say the outcome does impact you?
Of an election?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does. But I would say I'm allocating a proportional amount of attention to the amount of impact I can have to that outcome, right? So I'll educate myself and I will vote, and it's like, but I don't need to know what so-and-so's son did whatever years ago. Like it's not impacting me.
Yeah.
And
so, they're never going to know, Jered.
Yeah. So like it's I think that's a good way of wording it. Like I allocate a proportional amount of attention to how I can impact it. And so it's like I can impact heavily how my kids view me as a dad. So there's tons of time and energy go into that. But
same thing with their business.
Can I my business, but can I impact on how Chick-fil-A's leadership wants to use their profits?
Not right now.
I mean, I could say I'm not going to buy, everybody has an impact, and we talk about ripple effect. Like I see the argument, but I don't care.
There you go. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, right? Yeah. There's a lot of things this is about you. I'd be really opinionated about some things if the roles were reversed. I don't care what, I only care what people think about me, that I need to care what they think about me. And that's very small in the numbers of humans.
Yeah.
It's the people that I'm directly responsible for, to lead them, to impact them. It's similar to what you're saying. And the struggle to have concern about the opinions of others, that I have zero impact on their life and they have zero impact on mine. Humans get caught up on that way too much, and it holds them back from a lot of stuff. We could have a conversation about politics and religion and all that, but where I've been recently is, I think both of those institutions of politics and religion, I'm sure they have some good impact on society at times. There's good that comes out of it. There's a lot of bad. But what I don't like about both organizations, regardless of the politics, regardless of the religion, is that they're convincing everyone that they're going to be taken care of. That's the mistake. The mistake is the government playing this trick on us, that they're going to take care of us, that we're not responsible. And the same thing with religion. Doesn't matter. You can believe what you want to believe, but at the end of the day, you got to get up and you have to take action on the things you want to achieve in life. If you don't, nobody's coming to rescue you. That's been my experience in life. You have your parents around you, you have a few other significant people, but just wait for the government and wait for your religion to come and save you from your life. Haven't seen that work too often.
Yeah. I mean, I think even like most religions, at least that I understand it, is like the religious dogma is less important than just like the principles of it. There you go. And so like I agree with a lot of the principles, but the dogma is less important. And political, like a lot of times I think on political aspect, most of us would agree on most things, but instead we
focus on the differences.
Focus on the differences. And I think you said you can be opinionative. I would say I try to be less opinionative, and it's like it's okay if you and me all feel very different things. That's totally fine, and we respect that. Yeah. Have you heard of Stoicism?
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
So like I think if I had to boil my understanding down of Stoicism, it's focus on what you can control. And it's kind of like what I was saying before. It's like proportionally I focus on what I can control, what I can have an impact on, and allocate my attention to that.
One of the best books I've read and listened to is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Mm-hmm. And it's in line with kind of a Stoicism perspective on things. Mm-hmm. It's crazy that I believe he's the emperor that had somewhat of a person who was a slave back in Roman times always follow him around all the time and tell him that he was no better than a slave. It's wild. So reading that book and listening to Meditations, it's awesome. But yeah, Stoicism, there's some arguments around it because everybody wants to be so caught up in the world and all the happenings, and there's just so few things that we can control on that people are so upset about. Stoicism is an awesome approach. Mm-hmm. But for some people, it's not as excited. It's not exciting enough to them.
That's okay too.
Right? Yeah. What do you hope in a decade, not about your business, what do you hope for Jered in 10 years?
So that's the whole idea of intentionality. So one pillar I see is like health and wellness. It's a massive hobby of mine. So I'd say behind real estate, that's where I self-educate the most, is like health, wellness. That'd be diet, nutrition, exercise, stuff like that. So I have goals set around that, and I have specific actions that I take that I think will move me towards those goals. Family, friends, those types of things are things that I reverse engineer. And so maybe this is the scientific method that I don't know about, but I'll give you an example. So I struggle with, I always say it's a gift and a curse as an entrepreneur of I can put myself into the future, but I consider it a bit of a curse because I struggle to live in the present. So from a personal perspective, one of the things I try to work on is like the ability to live in the present and enjoy the current moment. And so one thing I took action on to say I'm going to be better at that is I said, I'm going to put my daughter to bed 340 of 365 days out of the year. And I'm going to track that by making a video diary with her. So we literally just lay in bed. I hold my phone over. We say what we're grateful for, something we failed at, and then something we're proud of. And we both say it each night. And now my phone is just, for years now, we've done this. And so you can see her growing up. But anyway, what I'm trying to get to is the intentionality of saying, I struggle to be present. I want to be better at that. Here's the actions I can take. And here's a metric that I can hold myself accountable to. So when I look at my phone now, I can see 360 out of 365 days, I was there, present, talking, thinking with my daughter, putting her to bed. And so the future, what it looks like for me is hopefully I'm a better version of myself. Like I like who I am today. I think I'm doing a good job. I just want to make incremental improvements to who I am. Health, wellness, relationships, family, husband, just generally as a man too. And then we can go into like business and all that stuff too. But certain pillars, I just prioritize.
Do you speak daily affirmations? Are you a daily affirmations guy? That's
No.
the next step. I didn't think you would, but like that's the next step that some people take.
Mm.
They speak to what you're talking about is you reverse engineer and you're thinking about yourself and doing that. A lot of people are speaking to like that they're already doing it.
Mm.
That presently they would say, I forget what you said before you were talking about putting your daughter to bed, but they actually speak as something in the future, but you are now.
Yeah, they're like, I am a present dad and my kids see me as a hero or what.
Or you are, not saying,
Yeah.
I am a hero to my kids.
Yeah. No, I not something that I ventured down, but
it's not necessary for you.
Whatever works.
Yeah, it's not necessary for you. So what about the when you said you're trying to replace yourself?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Are you reverse engineering that?
Yeah, I'd say we're pretty far away from it, so I don't know exactly how I'm reverse engineering it, other than saying we're building systems and processes. And so it's kind of like when we go through an acquisition, now there's a much more defined, rigid process of like, here's the checklist that we work through, right? So eventually I can hand that to someone else. So yes, part of the continuous improvement is saying we try this new thing, we identify that we want to continue to do it, and then once we know we're going to continue to do it, there is a defined process around it so someone else can do it the way we intend it to be done. And so over the years, there's just more and more of those things kind of stacking up. The trick is to then not add a bunch of other things on the other side. And so we really have stayed in our lane for 16 years. And yes, we've grown in scale, but we've done the same business model over and over and over and over. So if we just continue that, we can put good people in place to work those processes and slowly but surely kind of remove some of them off of our plate. So I think we're still far away. So it would be a waste of time for me to say, let me sit down and define all of those things.
What advice would you go back and give you're sitting here at 34, the 18-year-old Jered? What advice would you give him?
So, I mean, people listening to this, I would say your story is not my story, and it shouldn't be. Like, everybody has their own advantages, their own core competencies, their own things, intentions they want in life. And so I don't know if I would change any. Like, I would think that if I went back in time and
What
gave
advice? Not change anything. No regrets. Not just what advice would you? It could be as simple as like do everything the way you're doing it.
I don't know, that's too easy. I don't.
All right.
I don't want to take that out.
Yeah.
Um,
Like what advice? Like nothing foo-foo or anything, but it goes in line with some things you probably learned along the way.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give him? Smile more, be happier, go travel more, work harder, even though you guys were working hard. Don't sweat the small stuff. What advice would you give him?
So the advice I would give is one that I do think I lived up to. It's a gamble because we're not guaranteed anything, but I was aware that I would want free time more in the future than I did in my 18 to 22-year-old kind of phase. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. But once I had kids, once I was married, once the responsibilities of life hit, I want free time more now than I did when I was 18, 24. So I took the gamble and said, I'm going to give up all of that in pursuit of having more of it later. I think there's a quote or a cliche of like, I'll live like most people won't so that I can live like most people can't. And I would advise that is a worthwhile bet. And it is a bet, right? Because if you get hit by the bus at 23, it's like, that was a dumb move. But
you're not going to know.
Yeah, it's a calculated risk. It's an asymmetric bet. And so I have a lot of freedom and flexibility, and a lot of what I set out in pursuit of, I have it. And so I would just encourage the doubtful 18-year-old, like, that's a good bet. Make that bet, right?
Hard work matters.
Yeah, like sacrifice. And not everyone would agree with this, but like, I really did. Me and my brother, we sacrificed our, call it early 20s to produce what we have in our early 30s. And so what that means is like, we weren't going out drinking. We didn't have much of a social life. It's okay with that. And free time wasn't really there, right? It was just like, but I was having fun. I was enjoying it. So it wasn't like I was in prison, but there was a lot given up to make it work.
Did you doubt any of it along the way?
I don't remember any like strong doubts. No.
So it's not like you needed to go back and tell the Jered, like, hey, don't worry about it. Like, stick with it. It's worthwhile. You already believed it then.
I'm sure there was days. I don't have vivid memories of it, but I mean, we weren't making money.
Could you call it passion? Were you passionate about it?
I mean, it didn't feel all that different than going out in the woods and building tree houses with my brother, right? Like, we were just in houses fixing them up. Like, it felt like the same thing as that.
So you're telling me it didn't feel like a job?
There were days it was, right? Like, when we're in the sewage and stuff like that, it feels like a job, but I look back on it with gratitude. There was those days, right? But then the next day it was like, I'm ready to go to work. It was fun. And it still is fun. I would say it's less fun than it used to be because it's more responsibility than it used to be. From a work standpoint. Is
that okay?
I would love to go back and just work me and my brother only some days, but then I wouldn't have the other things that I also enjoy, like the freedom and flexibility and the great people who are taking the actions to build the business that I, casted in the vision. So
what I've learned in life is there's a trade-off with everything, with absolutely everything. You don't achieve something without giving something else up.
Yeah.
I've seen it. There's nothing that I've seen that has worked out different than that.
It's kind of like that's the laws of nature.
Yeah, right.
It's an exchange of value. And, some I'd say the original question is like, what advice is like, just believe in that, right?
That the exchange for doing the work now and making some sacrifices now is going to put you in a much better spot in the future, so that you're more happy, you're more free. So then the question is, when is the plateau okay? So if the 20-something-year-old Jered had to set the 30-something-year-old Jered up, that means that the argument is the work you're doing now is setting the 40-something-year-old Jered up. At what point is the plateau? When's it enough?
It's a good question, but I would say it's like a fluid thing, right? So like it's a matter of how you're feeling. Are you content? Is the amount that you're having to sacrifice in the right balance? And only one individual can answer that, right? So like if you asked me, like, I think I know what it would take. Let me say this. I believe that if I wanted it, I could be a billionaire. I have zero desire to be a billionaire because I understand like that idea, that concept, the sacrifice of what it would mean. It's like, no, I have no interest in that. And so however you as an individual answer that question is how you'll know it's enough, right? And so I enjoy a pretty simple life. Like I have my 7 chickens at home, and I just like to hang out outside.
You drive your truck.
Yeah, I drive a Toyota Tacoma.
It was so predictable. I'm sorry, just predictable. Yeah. It's all good.
Right. And it's just when you have what you need, you want to continue to challenge yourself, but not push yourself over that limit. And so it's just, yeah, I'm still making sacrifices for 40-year-old Jered, and I'm making sacrifices for my kids to be able to be, grow into their ages. And as you said, everything is. But I do feel I have that privilege because of the time I put in early on to say, I don't have to be as intense with it. And I guess that's what my advice is like, maybe it's to the young generation is like, there's an opportunity when you're young that you just never can have again, of like this freedom and this freedom to sacrifice. Like, I don't have that anymore, right? Like I'm not willing to make the sacrifices that I made and could make reasonably at that age. And I think most people know that if you've been through it, that door closes quickly and responsibilities and other parts of life come in and you say, I can't make those sacrifices anymore, right?
But Colonel Sanders started KFC when he was 60.
Yeah. What do his kids think of him?
I don't know.
Grandkids.
I haven't interviewed him. I don't know, Jered. He's not around for me to do that anymore.
Yeah.
There's always outliers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I was beating around the bush with that answer. Maybe I don't have the right words for it, but hopefully somebody took away something from it.
I think so. Have you read the book or talked about it's about outliers, talking about Malcolm Gladwell, the New York Times bestseller, about 10,000 hours? Have you heard that idea?
Yeah. Yeah, mastery at 10,000 hours.
What's your? I don't even know if it's mastery. It's like proficiency, isn't it? It takes 10,000 hours to even become good at something. What's your thought about that? Does it feel real? Does it feel true? It's 5 years. 2,080 hours a year is 40 hours a week. Mm-hmm. So it's 5 years of 40 hours a week. So you can cut it down to 2.5 years after 80 hours. Does that make sense to you or no?
Feels too rigid. So like what I mean by that is it's not specific. It sounds like an on-off switch, but of course it's not that way, right? Like you ease into that mastery by saying like, oh, in year 1, now I know more than I did at year 0. And so, yeah, I mean, experience matters for sure, right? And I'm an example of learning through, I say school of hard knocks, but learning through experiences. And so
compounding growth.
Yeah. Like I don't think it's like once you get to 10,000 hours, you have completed that journey, right? Because I mean, we're both in real estate. Like the scenarios are never ending of what can be thrown at us. And so, I don't know what's under my belt, probably 40, 50,000 hours. I don't know, but, I'm continuing to learn.
Yeah. So what are you excited about for the future? Do you think that question, excited about for the future, but do you think that, this is your career? I mean, is this it?
Yeah.
You don't think you'll build this to 10,000 and sell it? No, I mean, that's always in the cards, right? Mm-hmm. But you think this is it?
If I do that, that would most likely be it. I don't want to build another business.
Yeah,
it's hard.
I'm not a serial entrepreneur either.
No.
So many people will think that. I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. Why would you want to do that again?
Yeah.
Right? Build a business to sell it. That's just not in my blood and DNA.
Mm. So, I mean, I think the best way to build wealth in real estate is to own it, not to sell it. So not not a great pitch for Pivot, but
I'm not worried about it. We sell investment properties 2 and 4 people too.
So we just want to hold long term, and be good at operating for consistent, predictable cash flow. And I intend to do that for a long period of time. If and when, I also don't have any intentions to say like hand this off to the next generation. So like I don't know what the end goal is. Are we packaging it into 10,000 and selling it off? I don't know. It's too far out on the horizon for me to even say.
Here's what's good for Pivot. I got to give a little pushback. I bet you own the home you live in.
Yes, I do.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. There's a big guru out there that speaks against that. I think there's a lot of core reasons being an American citizen about owning the place you live. Now, I'm not saying I had an apartment when I obtained my real estate license 19 years ago. I lived in an apartment. I just think there's something about eventually being able to own where you live, and so I don't know what you believe about that, and that's not even a gotcha question, but there's something about. I grew up very humble means, and there's something about being able to control and dictate your outcome that's important. But I also believe in growing and getting better every year, and so it's a journey of mine. I do believe people should stay in their homes longer than they do, and I would even make an argument if I owned apartment buildings like you, I'd probably make an argument that, hey, like keep that $980 a month rent and save the rest. So at some point down the road, you can live this dream. And don't go to the 1,300 and then don't go to the 1,700. Don't always upgrade. Don't always upgrade the car. Don't always upgrade everything. Save more than you're spending. And I think there's something special about if somebody wants to have a traditional family and I think there's something special about going home to a place that you own. Not saying there's not a place for apartments, right? So not trying to rope you into that, but since you said you don't think people should sell, I had to fire back too.
No. So, I mean,
what's your thoughts around that?
Pivot, like, obviously
we're real estate brokerage.
Generates revenue off of transactions. And if I'm
For
saying
us.
the best way is to hold long-term
and not pay those expenses, not pay commissions to sell and all that.
Oh, it has nothing to do with that. I guess it's just like
equity.
Once you figure out the operations of these assets, you can learn how to polish them better and better and better each year and produce better and better cash flow. Where if you're always trading them out, you're playing the game of leaning on something that's outside of your control, which is the market and timing that, and it's just not something that I know how to do.
Yeah. Obviously,
no.
You guys have proven the track record here on what works. But you were going to say something else.
So one of the things that's interesting about me is I've never rented. So I have never rented an apartment. I've never rented a home. I went from parents' house to, we bought, for listeners who are familiar with Cincinnati, like me and my brother, we left parents' house. We bought a 6-bedroom house in Lockland, Ohio. Not the greatest neighborhood.
Right off 75.
Yes. And we lived in 2 of the bedrooms and rented out the other 4 to friends. And that was the start of landlording. But so I completely agree that a great way to build wealth is to own real estate. And for many people, that means one home, the home they live in. But I don't think it's for everybody. Right. So I don't know what the homeownership rate is, probably like 60
something. Yeah, it's low 60s.
Because there's just people that there are responsibilities in owning a home that they're just not prepared for. And so it's just better for them to rent, but to each is their own again.
Boy, we could have a hell of a conversation on should people rent or not. And I think, there's places for all of it. Right. And that is what I would say is if you're going to dip your toes into the responsibility of home ownership, it's not just as simple as sending a guy your rent. Like, you send in a mortgage payment, there's a lot more around it, right? And if you're ready for those responsibilities in life and to set down roots, I think it can be good. Do you have debt on your current home?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, I was very bullish on debt through the times when, my rates locked at like 3 or whatever. And
free money almost.
Yeah.
After the interest deduction and all that.
I mean, the whole time that I was borrowing money for either my personal house or other, real estate ventures, it's like we were earning double-digit returns. And so the delta between borrowing costs and returns was
8-9%
quite wide to make me comfortable with debt. Yeah. Today, it's a little bit different scenario. we're talking about owning, renting, and I would say one universal statement that you made earlier that I think is applicable to renters or homeowners or anyone who is interested in progressing financially is live below your means, right? So delay the gratification, live below your means, do not max it out, do not always continue to trade up. You don't need to put yourself in that position because you'll never get out of it if you do. So,
wow. Okay, that's good. That's a guy who's built massive equity and net worth for you and investors, to giving some good advice on living below your means, spend less than you earn, and you'll start to probably create some financial freedom. And I know in my life, from experiences growing up, financial stress is some of the worst stress. It's the one that's almost the toughest to get away from. You can get away from breakups in life. People that we love do pass away. It's going to happen to us at some point. I don't think they've figured out how we're going to live forever yet. I don't think they figured that out. No. However, I did say something the other day that they are detaching heads and putting them on bodies. I saw that, man. Some AI robot they're working on. Yeah, if you can really make some short-term sacrifices, pay off some debt, and get a little bit of money in the bank so when the surprising things happen to you in life, they're not stressful, I think that'll cause a little bit more peace to arrive in your life than without it.
Yeah. I think you said it there, but I'll just reiterate it and say, like, if you live below your means, and that will be the first step to produce the ability to save some, whatever that is. And then what happens is once you have some, then you can start to execute on opportunities when they do present themselves. But if you don't do that first step, you're never going to be able to do the second step. And so going back to the advice to the young Jered is like, if you do that early, then you can get to step 2, right? So I think that's a pretty universal truth. I want to kind of avoid the hard lines in the sand, but if you live below your means, I think it's a pretty favorable outcome for, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of people who disagree with me, the YOLO crowd, right? You only live once, and it's like...
They're going to wake up at 50 and 60 and realize, they're going to realize some things, though, man. That is something definite that I know. If you do the things wrong financially in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you're going to pay the price. You're going to. Life is going to hold you accountable. And one thing you can't do in life, they say don't have regrets. You can't go back and relive it over again. The way you guys have done it, it's impressive, and kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, man. Maybe you'll be the first. Here's a challenge for SNS.
I'm ready.
Maybe you'll be the first landlord of significant units that have a power of home ownership classes on teaching people and helping educate them how to transition out of that, because you're always going to have new renters. Maybe. Do you already do it?
So one thing that didn't make it in here, but was in one of the drafts of this, back when I was writing it like 2.5 years ago.
Is this a Jerry Maguire moment?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know Jerry Maguire.
The movie. Okay. I'll talk about it, but let's hear it.
Again, I'm so tunnel vision.
That's okay.
But so I kind of saw it as it's a great way to build wealth, build financial stability. If you're talking about delivering the feeling of home, that would align with our mission statement to help individuals make that leap. So we talked about a setup. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but I think it was like, if you live at an SNS property for 7 years, we would take $100 per month of your rent for those 7 years and apply it to the ability for a, call it 5% down payment, right? So it was like a bridge to home ownership, because unfortunately, a lot of our renters truly are at their means, right? But if we say, if you reduce our expenses and turnover by staying here for 7 years, and we did all the calculations of this, if you give us a 7-year length of stay at an SNS unit, that reduces our turnover enough that then we could allocate $100 per month to a down payment. Then at our unit count, we would then partner with real estate brokerages, title companies, things like that, to say, hey, we're going to bring you 1,000 clients or whatever the number is. And so we need a little bit of revenue off of that, because that's going to help us offset this money that ultimately makes it to our client, our resident. So that was all an idea that did not stick.
What happened?
I don't remember what happened to it. I think it came down to the comment of like, it's not, homeownership is not for everyone. And what do we do to the people who are in our units for 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
You take that money and you roll it into them being an investor in future properties.
Yeah, then the SEC gets involved.
Do they?
Yeah. We can only raise money from accredited investors.
Yeah, over $250,000 net worth, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, then give them the money back. Do something for them.
So it was an idea, and then I think like charitable contribution in version 2025 to 2028. Another idea that I have that I don't know if we can bring it to fruition, but talking about the mission of delivering the feeling of home. One thing that's important to definitely my wife and something to me is like the impact you can have on kids, and no group does that better delivering the feeling of home to a group that needs it for kids than like foster parents. So we were like toying with the idea of like, how do we buy a whole apartment community, call it something small, like 40 units or something, and cut the rents in half of what they were, but it has to be, then we partner with a foster parent organization and say, if you're a foster parent, if you're a qualified foster parent, you can live here at a significantly reduced rate for being that person in our society that's willing to step up to that really challenging aspect of being a foster parent. And so it's an idea that we have on like the give back, the charitable aspect, but your idea of how do you turn renters into homeowners, like we toyed with that, and I wish I remembered better exactly what made it fizzle, but something made it fizzle out.
The reason why it's important, these ideas are important to me, is because if you can turn a country guy that didn't have financial literacy like me, that grew up of humble means, into a business owner leading a multi-million-dollar company, then it's definitely possible to turn people that don't have a high level of financial literacy, that have come up renting, definitely you can turn them into homeowners. Because I see every day when we get to represent people on the residential side and help people buy and sell homes, it matters. It's good for communities. And so I'm sure it's good for communities in the way that it's good for communities when SNS owns a property. Mm-hmm. Because if you really are living by these principles, and I believe it, if you're living by it, then you're making those communities better. Mm-hmm. I think if we're all just looking for ways to try to improve people's lives a little bit more, I give two shits about the millionaires' net worth. I don't give a shit about us. It's like I want to make those people that don't have the idea that maybe this thing's possible, or they can be like, let's help them a little bit more. I'm not looking for realtors already making $200,000 and $300,000, $400,000. Like, that's the principles of my business. Mm-hmm. I want to take the person who's making $50,000 and $60,000 and $70,000 and let me help turn them into a $200,000 a year earner, because I see how that changes their life. Mm-hmm. And so it's not always about money, right? It's not always about money on breathing into people and inspiring them.
So in your pursuits of that, I would say you have not been given harder market conditions to achieve that goal than we're in right now, right? I don't know how long you've been.
19 years, 19 but Pivot years. 16 is kind of funny.
Yeah. So I would say home ownership has never been more challenging in our careers than it is today, right? Like, so
even just, I mean, you guys are stabilized, but these new apartments around here, these rents are really tough for people too. Like, they can come with, you guys are reasonable, but a lot of these new apartment complexes around here, like $1,800, $1,900, $2,200, and it's like, that's not easy either. Mm-hmm. But keep going down this path of home ownership.
Well, I think
first time buyers, especially,
we're not innocent in that either, right? Like, so our minimum criteria to move in is that income needs to be a third of the rent, right? So if someone chooses to push themselves to that edge, that's still financially very straining, right? A third of it goes to housing. You got 2/3 left to cover everything else. And so that's not living below your means, in my opinion, and that's going to stress you financially. But if the rental market is where it is, it makes it very challenging to build savings, which then, right now where lenders are, like, you might need more equity to put down, and then you have to make even more to then, pay the principal and interest. And so it's just a really challenging time. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen like graphs and graphics of like cost to rent to cost to own. And dollars to dollars, it's cheaper to rent right now than it is to own, and so it's not favorable to the.
Oh, we started a whole nother podcast, Jered. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but it's so I think the interest rates environment's challenging. This all goes all the way back to 2008 when housing starts dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a 4 to 5 year period where builders around the country weren't building homes. Lots weren't being developed. And so no one started that again and got out in front of it. So then we got into this environment with very low interest rates that felt like free money. People all of a sudden that were going to be happy living in their $200,000, $250,000, and $300,000 homes, all of a sudden they went, wow, okay, I have a $1,600 a month payment on my $240,000 home that was at 6.25% interest rate. Now rates are 3.25%. I can go buy that new $500,000 home down the street. And so when that happened, it pushed the price of everything up. And so the affordability metrics now it's different, right? And so I think that I don't have a dog in the fight. Like I don't have this agenda on if people should rent or buy. Me and you don't control the 60-something% ownership. That means 30-something% of the people are renters, right? That metrics isn't just controlled here in Cincinnati. I just know that what I figured out in life is that if you can go down this journey of just getting a little bit better every day, every year, improving your life just incrementally a little bit better, that usually goes in line with making a little bit more money. Somebody getting a promotion. Those kids that are working at McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, the argument is that they don't stay in that job forever. That's the argument. And so if they don't stay in that job forever, they might get a college degree. They might become a manager somewhere. They're going to make more money. So I just wish that we had an environment and a setup where renting apartments and owning home ownership was part of a path. And it doesn't have to be, but a lot of people think that being a first-time home buyer is unaffordable now. They think that. When I read these articles, I'm like, it's not true. We find a way. Entrepreneurs find a way. Like we partner with a company, a lender, Bank of England. It's England, Arkansas. It's not across the pond. And there were grants and incentives over the past 5 to 6 months up to $20,000. It's real. It was income-based. It was number of people in the household, whether you're a first-time buyer. There were people that were, like if you buy a $200,000 home right now and you get an FHA loan, 3.5% down. 3.5% down, you're going to have to put down $7,000. You can get gifts from families and all that stuff. But if you put down $7,000, that's a part a lot of people don't have. Mm-hmm. But if you put down the $7,000, this $20,000 grant was offsetting a ton of that stuff. Like there's these things out there, but it's credit score requirements, income required. But what I go back and tell people is that a 6 and 7% rate, it's balanced. Mm-hmm. That's balanced in the marketplace. I think we were greedy for a very, very long time on this cheap money. Mm-hmm. So I don't know the metric, man. I think that there's, I just want people to know that if they put their head down and make sacrifices like you made in your 20s, you can still make those in your 30s and 40s. You can do big things. And some people, like rent, keep paying you $1,200 and $1,300 a month in rent. When you get that promotion at work, save the money. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have a dog in the fight. Buy a home, don't buy a home. Rent an apartment, don't rent an apartment. But I do believe in this idea of making some sacrifices to improve your life down the road, man.
Yeah, I think it's for those who are willing to own a home and acknowledge the extra responsibilities that is relative to renting. So like fixing things and upkeep and all that stuff. It's the easiest and fantastic way to build wealth.
It's forced.
Right. It is like the 101 of American wealth generation, right? That's where the majority of people's net worth is tied up in their home, right?
It was probably that way for your parents.
Yeah. Like I think it's that way for most people, right? And so I think, going back to my story, it's like I just looked around and was like, wait a minute, if that's where most people are building their net worth, I'm just going to do that times 1,300.
There you go.
But yeah, I think for the average person, I think it's still a very good option, but you have to sacrifice to have the means to then put yourself in front of that opportunity. We talked about it, but this is the specific example. You have to save a little bit to be able to put the down payment. I think it's great that there's grants. No, I should say, I think it's great that you guys are trying to solve that problem. I don't think that we should need grants to be able to do this.
True capitalist at heart.
Yeah, like I think the market should correct, and that means value should go down, like in my opinion, like if it's, or wages should go up, something like that.
And it will correct.
Yeah. It's a beautiful balance.
It'll correct.
And so
we got to get back to being willing to sacrifice a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's where we're lacking, right?
Society got out of line a little bit.
Yeah, instant gratification.
Yeah, which we like it, but you have to put it in check a little bit. You guys could be the most loved landlord of all time. Fine.
Maybe.
Well, listen, you have to strive for something. It'd be amazing for a landlord to have and then why not you guys, you don't have to partner with a broker, just go start one. Just start one. That way you can collect the commissions there too, and you truly can have a program. You don't need to refer them to us. Like if I was you, a business person, entrepreneur, that's what I'd do. Go start the brokerage, have a program where they can transition from renting from you to selling a home, collect those commissions. If you want to start the title company at some point, it's like start the insurance brokerage, do it all.
See, those types of things don't appeal to me because I'm just like, stay in my lane. I know where I'm going to make my money. And like, I could go buy carpet cleaning machines too.
That's different.
But I would rather hire the carpet cleaning company because they already built all the systems and processes. I don't want to recreate the company.
I'm talking about the life path of your customer on changing people's lives, man. I do. I see this model like it because you guys really could do this thing and capture a good income, and I don't think it's too far deviates away from what you're doing. Don't do the insurance company, but start the brokerage because you're going to hand them off to somebody that you don't know if they're going to be handled the way that you guys handle your tenant. You can try to have an agreement all day, but then there's independent contractor realtors that are dealing with those people too. There's a model here. I've thought about this in the past. This isn't just this conversation. That somebody that's a really good landlord that has thousands of units should do this. But
yeah, I remember when we were toying with the idea, it was called like, bridge to home ownership or some cliche name like that. But
you guys
there's a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of moving parts. But I think you'd be loved. That'd be a legacy. People talk about this.
I don't want a legacy.
Well, no, but I think if the legacy is impacting people's lives, that's a hell of a purpose here on this earth. So I don't know. They could build statues of you, man, because and then your kids can go like rub the foot to give them good luck.
So your comment of the most loved landlord, I would say what I've experienced is that's very unrealistic. The best thing that we strive for is kind of like if we're doing our job really well, it's like they don't notice us, right? And that's what we want, right? So it's people will notice that their landlord is crummy when their fridge is leaking, but if the fridge never leaks, they're not thinking about their landlord, and that's actually what we want, right? So we don't want to be the most loved. We want to be like the least thought of, because we're making sure everything executes in the background. So
I think that's admirable.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming and spending time with us.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Anything you want to talk about? Investors making us all read where do we go find this? This just can't be something that I can find. Where do we define business success?
That's only for you.
No way. No way, man.
So we hand this magazine out to anyone who applies at our company at any level. But then we do have the electronic version of it that looks like a magazine.
Plug your website.
It flips over. I don't know if this is on our website.
Come on, man. You guys are focused too much on the business.
Yeah. It's in my email signature. So it's probably in our website. It's probably on our website.
So what's the best place that they can go find out about your guys' properties in Cincinnati to come and not rent a property from the most loved landlord, from the one that you don't even know?
Yeah, that's a catchy slogan. I might have to work on that one. But the our website's SNSCapitalGroup.com, and so that'd be the best place to connect with me and learn more and
listen to the brilliance.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I'm super appreciative of being here and you sharing your time and
these guys,
everybody in the background who's working hard to give me the platform to share a little bit of our story and hopefully make an impact on someone who's listening.
Yeah, I think so. And what's the so give a final in as we wrap up here, and we talked about it before, but this idea of entrepreneurship didn't seem like you were destined to be an employee at 16, 17, and 18 on challenging the grown-ups and authority. Do you advise it? Go ahead.
I did. I was an employee. I worked at Goodwill one summer.
See, you do have good things inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah, they were paying the most.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. This is like 2005. I don't know. $9 an hour working at Goodwill.
In 2005?
Mm-hmm.
I thought they only employed certain types of people. Did you get in there because you're dyslexic?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I didn't ask questions.
No shit?
No. I was just a person that ran the cash register and hung up clothes.
This is the first time I've met anybody that worked at Goodwill.
Well, my brother also worked at Goodwill. So
really?
Yeah.
Did you guys know the people operating it?
No.
You just applied?
Yeah, just applied.
Dave, who would have thunk it? We're going to have our first guest getting close to 100 episodes here of our first Goodwill employee.
Yes, I'm honored. Sorry, I pulled you way off of your thought process.
No. But back to it. When I said you weren't made it, but you were an employee, and you must have found some things that you didn't like about it, or just wasn't your destiny. But what's the advice, not to people who are entrepreneurs, not the 18-year-old Jered, people about thinking about starting a business? We've talked about some principles and values today. You wrote this entire – so Jerry Maguire, in the movie, he was a sports agent, and he wrote a book. He was the top agent at his agency on representing high-powered athletes, and he wrote a thesis on how his industry and business was doing it wrong, and dropped it on everybody's desk, and they fired him because of it. So it was like the anti-agency agent. So you've defined principles and values and what your goals are on fixing refrigerators so they don't have to worry about the tough things. And somebody who's going to start a business, I think you do have advice you can share with them because you've been doing this for 16 years. What do you tell them? What do you want them to know?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this came up in our conversation, but not specifically in these words. But what I've learned, people see you and I, and they see maybe the financial results, and investors seek us out because of those financial results. But what I've learned, and it's crystal clear to me, is financial results are supported by on-site operations for apartments. But you could even say, in a real estate brokerage, like the financial results are supported by let me go with what I was saying. Financial results are supported by on-site operations, but on-site operations are supported by the people who work there. And so, like, same with your business, same with any other business. It's like you get to a point where the results are generated all by the people who are part of that organization. And so it's amazing how long it kind of takes you to realize it, despite everyone saying like, oh, it's all about the people in the organization and all that stuff. But, when you're young, just starting, your nose is against that grindstone and you're like, I can work it out. But as the company scales, you realize like the organization is only as good as the people that are in it. And so if you are getting into business because of the financial returns it could generate, do not forget that those are produced by the people who work there. And so like that's very, very consistently true. And I've gotten a lot better at knowing that over the years.
Great way to end it. Define business success, Jered Sturm. Keep on buying those apartments. You got 2,500 to get to.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for coming. Much success the rest of 2024.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, man.
I appreciate it.